Today, what we are going to do is we will talk about something in relation to a relational database. That is, like we are trying to replicate a kind of a environment where we are saying that we will work around an example of a software IT company. Okay. So in an IT company, right, if you want to maintain a database of the entire IT organization, then there are set of entities that are involved. Like for example, in an IT company, obviously there would be what there would be an employees, right? So if it is an IT company, or for that matter, any organization, there will be employees. Right? Let's say employee is one entity. Then if you have employee, then there are branches of offices as well. Like for example, Infosys has a headquarter in Bangalore, but it has got an offices in Pune, in Hyderabad, in Mumbai, and all other locations. So let's say we call another entity as let's say branches. Okay? Let's say branch. And if it is an IT services company, then obviously it is bound to have some customers. Okay, customers they'll be having, whether let's say if it is a company, then it might have a customer like American Express, a credit card company, or a Walmart, which is like FMCG or e-commerce company. All right, and then there might be another customers as well. And at the same time, if there is an IT services company, then there are many vendors that it have. Like for example, if for a well functioning of any IT services organization, there are many vendors they have. The vendors that will supply some human resources to them. Okay, there are vendors who are providing some stationery materials like pen, pencil, paper, what is needed for the staff. Okay, all that is needed. So let's say there is an entity called vendor. Okay, there are vendors. And also understand that if there is a vendor and employee and customer, and at the same time there are n number of employees, and each employee will assign to a particular customer. Okay, it might be like an employee ABC is working in a branch Pune, but for the customer American Express, and there is a XYZ employee who is working from a branch Mumbai but working for a customer called uh, Walmart. Okay, so now there should be an assignment, like employee is assigned to a particular customer, because there are an IT services company, right? There are n number of employees who are working for different customers. So let's say there is also a entity called employee assignment. Okay, so I am employee assignment. Let's say EMP. Okay, employee assignment. So are you guys able to see the screen, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So now these are the set of entities we can think of at present. Okay, these are the entities, and each entity has given a particular name. Now, at the same time, if there is an entity, then obviously there are attributes associated with that entity. Like, for example, an attribute, like we are talking about going into creating an ER diagram. So let's say if it is an employee, employee might have what? Employee ID. Okay, let's say employee ID, and then employee first name. Okay, first name, then there is a last name. All right, then if employee, let's say designation, or let's say date of joining, when is the employee joined the organization, that is called a date of joining. Then it might be a designation as well. DESIGNATION, designation. So like for example, employee Ravi might have joined as a senior director, and there is an employee Pooja who might have joined as a senior developer. Okay, so in the same way, there is a designation associated with each employee. Then at the same time, there is gender. So male, female. Okay, so that gender allocation is there, and then the salary of an employee. All right, these are the set of attributes that we are trying to create it. And then if an employee is there, then there is a certain manager or whom he or she reports to. Okay, lead. All right, let's say we create a lead ID. So what it means is there is a person an employee reports to for all their activities or whatever they do in an organization. And then each employee will be assigned to a particular branch, so they are working from a location. Let's say some employee work from Pune, some employee works from Bangalore, so there is a branch associated with each employee from where they are working, that is branch ID, let's say. All right. So what you see right here, right? These are some of the 9 attributes that I have thought of, like adding into employee entity. All right. And these are the attributes of an employee. Or let's say if we go ahead and create a relational database, then employee will be mapped to a table name, and these all attributes will be column names. All right. Now let's say the same thing with the branch. Let's say branch has a branch ID, branch underscore ID, and then branch will have a branch name, which is basically a city name, branch name. And then a branch can have, like, if there is a branch, right, then usually what there will be a business unit head, BU head we call it as, or a head of the branch, something like that. So let's say head of the branch ID. So HOB is nothing but head of the branch ID. And then we are going to create in a particular branch or a location how many employee counts are there. Like for in Bangalore location there are 100 employees working, in Pune there are 50 employees. So that is, we are going to say that as a head count. Okay. All right, so this is what the branch attribute, branch entity has these many attributes. I mean, I'm just taking it up some numbers, some entities. There might be a lot of them. This is just for our example to consider. All right. And now let's go ahead and create something called as customer. So what the customer can contain, customer would obviously contain a customer ID. So let's say customer ID. And then this customer might have a name like Amex or Walmart or anyone, right? Let's say customer, let's say name, customer name. And then a customer can also have, let's say, if a customer is there, then there are certain number of employees allocated to that customer reside at a particular branch. So usually how it happens in an IT organization, right, there will be a global development center where a, a set of employees who are allocated to a particular customer reside at the same location most of the time, 99% of the time. So, sometime they are spread across the locations, but usually it is encouraged for all the employees to be at one geographical location. Let's say it as a branch ID. Branch ID. So what it means is an employee A is working in a branch, some branch ID, and for the customer. That is what it means. So the customer ID might be 123, customer name might be Amex, and customer the branch ID of that employee might be 100. So which is related to some city. All right. So this is how we can say this is a customer um, entity with all these attributes associated with that entity. Now let's say vendor. So now when we talk about the vendor, right, then vendor is serving for a particular branch. All right. So let's say branch ID, then they are working as a vendor name. Okay, so let's say vendor name. And then there is if there is a name, then what is the service they provide. Okay, what are the, let's say, supply type, what are they supplying, whether they are supplying pen, pencil, paper, or human resource, or all that matters. Okay, some air conditioning services. So that is the supply type we are going to talk about in terms of vendor. And this vendor is serving at a particular branch. That is what it means. So for Pune location there might be a separate vendor, for Bangalore location it might be a separate vendor. Okay, so we are putting that in a uh, one table with these many columns. And finally, let's say we are going to have an employee assignment. So how are we going to assign an employee with a particular customer? We, let's say we will have an employee ID. Let's say employee ID, and this employee will be working for a particular customer. So let's say customer ID, customer ID. And then if there is a customer ID, then we, let's say what is the total revenue generated for that customer. Okay, let's say revenue or total sales. All right, so let's, it is just a simple random thing that I have selected. So understand that this is what we have seen so far by analyzing the different entities and the attributes. Let's go ahead and create this one entity and the attributes that we have created and map that to a relational database. Let's create a table and rows and columns associated with them. For that, let's jump on to SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. And here, let's say I'm going to create a new query. All right. A new query, a query window appears. Let's say I'll save this as, where is that? Let's save as, on my desktop, I'll save this. Let's save this as a company, company.sql. All right. I have saved this. So now if you can observe, it is company.sql. All right. So now what I can do, guys, maybe I'll go view and make it as a full screen. Okay. Or you can use Shift Alt Enter. That is also key, shortcut key that you can use just to make it as a full screen. That's it. We'll have our entire window in a full screen. Let's go back to our example here. What is that we have created? Let's say we'll create something called as employee. Prior to that creation, what I need is, if I go back, there is no database currently exists here. Okay, so for that, what I need to go ahead and do, let's create some database. All right. Prior to that, what I need to do is, let's see what version currently that I have installed. For that, I'm going to use select version. Right? So this will give me what version of SQL that I have installed. I mean, Microsoft SQL Server that is installed. And select, if I go ahead and select and run, only this particular statement is selected. Okay, mind you. And otherwise, if I just go ahead and execute, every query that is there inside this file will be executed. So what I'll do, usually I select the query and execute. You can say execute key you can press, or F5 key you can press. So if I execute, this is what the output would look like. Microsoft SQL Server 2022 16.0.100.6. Okay. And this is the current SQL Server that is installed. Now let's go ahead and create what is known as database. So for that, we are going to use a command called create database. All right. Either you can use capital letters or small letters. It's no problem. Okay. These SQL keywords are case insensitive, which means they can go ahead with capital letters or small letters. It's absolutely fine. Now let's say I want to create a database called company. All right. So now create database company. So currently no database exists. If I go ahead and select and execute, command successfully, commands completed successfully. So which means this particular command has executed. And for that, if you want, if you see there is no database currently it is showing, for that what you need to do is, guys, just go ahead and refresh this F5. So the moment you refresh it and see the database, it would have been created. So the database that is created is same as what you have given here, which is company. Now with that, what I can go ahead and do, once the database is created, now what you need to do is you need to create these tables. These are the entities that you have created. The entity will be mapped directly to a table name. All right. So now currently it is using master. Okay, so the available database is master. So in order to use this company database, I use a command called use company. Or the other way that I can do is just go ahead and select in the drop down the company. That is one way to do it. Another way is just use the SQL command called use company. All right. So what it will do is it will use this database. If I go ahead and execute, so command completed successfully, and if you see, automatically this drop down has changed to company, so which means I am now working with this database, not the master database earlier. All right, now what I can do, I can go ahead and create this table called employee. So for that, we need to use the command called create. All right, now I can go ahead and expand this, guys. Let's say view and full screen. Let's say, or I can go ahead and do it a little bit down. That's fine. And now create table is the keyword again. And next you need to enter employee. This is the table name that we have used here, employee. So the table name, and then you can go ahead and start the brackets. And here I'm going to enter, what is the first one? First one is employee name. Okay, so employee ID. Now employee ID is of what data type? Integer data type. Okay, let's say I want to create this as an integer data type, and it should be a primary key. Okay. Now, what is this primary key? Primary key is nothing but a constraint in SQL. Okay. So, why do we need constraint, guys? Constraints are basically used to limit the type of the data that you can put into the table. So, whether it is a primary key, secondary key, whether you accept a null characters or do not accept a null characters when you enter the rows into a table. So these are all constraints. So some of the good examples of constraints are, like for example, primary key is one constraint. Okay, there is also known as, let's say, foreign key is also a constraint. Then not null is also a constraint. Then you also have other constraints like default. Okay, default is also a constraint. Then check is also a constraint. So what identity, identity is also a constraint where you are going to give an identity of 1 comma 1. I'll come to that one by one. Now understand that primary key is a constraint we are going to use. And what is the purpose of this constraint? Primary key is always related to a unique value. Okay, uniqueness of that column it will maintain. So what it does, this constraint uniquely identifies each row in a database table, which means there it will eliminate the duplication. So every row that is entered into the table will have a unique value of a primary key. If there is duplicate, if you're trying to enter, then the table does not allow you to enter those values. Okay, so the primary key will help you to maintain the unique values associated with a particular column in your database where you have defined primary key. And mind you that not only one column, more than one column can also be set as a primary key. All right, the combination of two columns can also be a primary key. Then what is this foreign key? Foreign key is like when foreign key in one table, right? In one table you are defining a foreign key, it points to the primary key of the another table. Like for example, if you see, there is an employee ID which is a primary key here, PK, but this primary key, let's say, yeah, the if you have, let's say this this example, this is good example. Now if you see, this is a foreign key, branch ID. Now this branch ID will be a primary key in the branch. So here this will be a primary key. Let's say I want to highlight this primary keys as yellow. Let's say this is a primary key, but this primary key is pointing to a foreign key in this. All right, so what it will do, What is that you are trying to do here when you are assigning a foreign key in employee table? You are saying the foreign key in this table, which is an employee table, points to the primary key in the branch table. So by doing that, what will happen? By doing that, this foreign key will be preventing the action that could destroy the links between the tables. Now what happens? Let's take this example. Suppose there is an employee that I have added with a branch called 101. All right. And there is a branch ID that is there with the value 101. And here in the branch table, there are multiple values for the branch ID. Like, for example, it might have 101, it might also have 102. All these values are existing in the branch table. Let's say branch IDs, there are a lot of branch IDs that exist. Now, suppose if I go ahead and delete the branch 101 in the branch ID, okay, I'll delete that. Then all those references in the employee will be lost. Okay, there is now currently there is a record that is pointing to 101, but 101 branch ID does not exist at all. So these kind of links will be destroyed if we don't have this foreign key and primary key relationship. So that is the reason why we need a foreign key. Is the foreign key constraint is used to prevent the actions that would destroy the links between these two tables. Okay, you understood, guys, how this is important?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll take that with example and see how sometimes it will the database will throw an error when we try to execute certain uh, queries when there is a primary key and foreign key linkage. All right, now again, coming back to the original point, the primary key and foreign key are all the constraints that are there in the SQL. And at the same time, not null, what we'll do, like let's say, uh, let me go back to this one. What is that? Let me go back. I have a first name, right? Let's go back. Control KC. So guys, the shortcut here is Control KC. If you write, it will comment. And if you want to uncomment it, then what you need to do, Control KU. Okay. KC is for commenting. KU is for uncommenting. Okay. So I'll just use Control KC, which is for commenting the text. All right. Now what you have next one is first name. Let's say first name. Now in this first name, it is of a varchar, and let's say it is of 32. All right. Now I use the constraint called not null. So what it means? It means that you cannot have a row containing the first name as blank. Okay, you cannot have a null value to a first name. That is what this constraint will do. Not null. So first name is always mandatory to be entered into the row. It cannot have a null value or no value. So this constraint will prevent that. It will always force the records to have the first name. All right. Then what else is there? Then I can have a last name. Then last name is also var character. I can also add this. All right. And then I can go ahead and do what next is what dog. Dog is date of joining. It will be of date type. All right. So date is again a data type in SQL, where we can say date of joining is a date, and this also cannot have a null value. You need to have a non-null characters, non-null value for the date. And now date of joining, then there is a designation associated with it. Let's say designation is also a varchar with 32 characters. And then what else is there? Then there is a gender. Okay? Gender can be of varchar as well. Okay, either male or female, you can go ahead and enter. Okay, varchar varchar or varchar, whatever you say. All right. And then I can go ahead and I can put that not null as well. This is also fine. Or I can go ahead and add just to make sure that this is always there. And then I can add next one is a gender, then salary. Salary can be of integer type. And then there is a lead ID, which is whom the employee is reporting to. So this can be also a ID because it is a identifier. I can say null. So now again, like not null, there is also a value called null, which means if nothing is entered to a lead ID, it'll still accept the null value. Okay, null value is allowed for lead ID. All right, the default value. And then there is finally there is something called as a branch ID. So branch ID is also an integer, let's say, and I want to end it here with this. All right, now what I have done here, guys, what I have done is I have created a table name with employee same as your entity name. And then there are all the attributes that have been created with employee ID, first name, last name, date of joining, designation, gender, salary, lead ID, and branch. Okay, all of them. So now employee ID is created as a primary key here. Now let's say I want to make the primary key as auto increment. Now there is also a constraint called identity, right? Identity is like auto incrementing the value. You need not enter the value for this. Whenever a row is added, this will be automatically incremented. So let's say identity, let's say it starts from 10,000 and increase by one. All right. So this is what it means. So this is a identity. All right. So first name, there's a last name, then there is this value. All right. And now let's go ahead and execute this. Let's go ahead, query and execute. So now there is some constraint here. So what is it saying? Incorrect syntax at identity. So what is it having? If I go ahead, let's second, add the value here. This works. It's not taking the value. So it is still saying incorrect syntax error, whether it is accepting the value or not.
Sir, I think int ತಗೋಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ ಸರ್. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಐಡೆಂಟಿಟಿ 1, ಅನ್ನೋದು ಆಟೋಮೆಟಿಕ್ ತಗೋಲ್ಲ, ಇಂಟ್ ನೆಸೆಸರಿ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ.
No, it should not. It need not be because you can go ahead and enter the value. Identity 1000, 1000, 10,000, comma 1. And if I go ahead and execute, yeah, incorrect first name. Oh, sorry. Here I have not put a comma. All right. All right. So now it is fine. Okay. So the spelling I have done incorrect, I guess. Now this looks good. So what it says is the command completed successfully. All right. So if I go ahead and see the database, I'll refresh that inside the database called company, and I'll go to the tables, and here I can see an employee table that is being created has been generated here. And if I expand it further, it will show me the columns that it contains. If you see here in the column section, there is an employee which has a key kind of, right? Which means this is a primary key. And then there is a first name, last name, date of joining, designation, and all the entities that we have added or the columns that we have added is currently thrown here. All right, makes sense. So now with that, let's go ahead and create another um let's say another table. Let's say create table. Let's say the table is branch. because that is what we have created here, right? The table is branch, and branch contains branch ID. Let's say branch ID. Branch ID is of integer type, and this will also be a primary key. Primary key, where we do not want any duplicates here. And then there is a branch name. So the branch name might be varchar. Okay. So let's say it is of 32 characters and not null. Okay. So let's not have any null values for it. We should say some value associated with it. And then there is what HOB, okay, head of branch ID, and ID is always integer. And then we'll go ahead with the head count. Head count. Let's say there is a head count, and this is also of integer. So now we have created all this, and what I wanted to do is let's say head count now head of branch ID is same as an employee ID. Okay, only thing is all the employees are there. There are one employee who is supposed to be a head of this branch, so the employee ID is same. The head of the branch ID and employee ID are logically they are the same values, but in the table they are references with the separate name. So now what I can do, I can make this, which one, HOB, as a foreign key. What I can do, I can do this as a foreign key, which is referencing the employee ID. Okay. So now this becomes a foreign key. Let's say I'll add this some color. This is a foreign key. Sorry, not this one. Oh, let's say this is a foreign key. Let's say this is a foreign key, and this foreign key is pointing to this employee ID. So how do I set a foreign key? So now the question comes, what is it involved? Now there is something here that you need to note here. So what I can do is there is a command for this, which is foreign, foreign key. Okay. So what is the foreign key that I want to set it for? The foreign key is for HOB ID, right? HOB ID, which is head of branch ID, will be the foreign key. And this foreign key will references. This is again another keyword which is saying this HOB foreign key references to this employee ID of the table employee. So we are going to give that. So references what? Employee, employee table. Within the brackets, I'm going to write this employee ID. Employee ID. So this references. Now this will set the foreign key. Now what, again, I need to set what will happen when there is a delete. So whenever I delete this employee, then what should happen to the foreign key linking here? So I need to reference that. So what I need to do is on delete. So on delete, whenever the primary key is deleted, then how do I update the HOB ID? On delete, what I need to do? Set null. So what I'm going to do is whenever the employee ID is deleted, then the foreign key, which is referencing to this employee ID, will now be set to null value. All right. So that is what this foreign key references to the table, and on delete, what value to be set to the foreign key for this key, foreign key, HOB ID. All right. Now let's go ahead and close this and execute it. Execute it. So the command successfully completed successfully. Let's go and refresh and see whether there is a table that we have created. Yeah, there is a branch table that we have created. Let's say there is, again, now what I want to do is, guys, let's say I want to execute a DQL, data query language, which has a command called select. Select star from table What is the table name? Let's say table name is employee. So what this will do, this will select all the rows from the table. Let's go ahead and execute this. So currently there are no rows. That is the reason you can only see the table column headers. So employee ID, first name, last name, DOG, designation, again gender, salary, lead ID and branch ID, which we have created through this query, create query. Now at the same time, I can go ahead and select the uh, branch as well. So if I go ahead and select the branch, it will also has a branch ID, branch name, HOB ID and head count that we have created here. Now, if I want to select multiple queries also, I can select the multiple queries and then execute. Both the query execution will be shown one below the other. Okay. This also we can do it. Now that we have created two tables, and at the same time we have created what we have created two tables, and at the same time we have used a select query. Now what I want to do is, guys, let me try to alter the table, because what is happening here, here there is a foreign primary key I have created, but there is a foreign key existing here. Okay, branch ID, but I have not referenced that foreign key in the table for employee. So what I can do, now I'm going to use another command called alter. Alter command is used to modify or alter the tables. Alter table. Then what table I want to alter? Because foreign key is here, which is employee. So let's say employee. The table name is employee. Then I'm going to add. Add what? Foreign key. Foreign key. And what is the key value that I'm going to give? This is a branch ID. So I'll copy this branch ID and that is my foreign key. And this foreign key is referencing what? References the actually branch, right? So inside the branch, I'm going to have a branch ID. So references the branch. Inside that, I'm going to give what? This branch ID. Branch ID. All right. And then what I need to specify on delete, what should happen? On delete, set null. As simple. So what is that I'm trying to do? Initially, when I was creating this table, right, there was no foreign key that I have set it for branch ID. So now I want to change that. In order to change that table, we are going to use a command called alter. Okay, alter table employee. I'm going to add a foreign key with foreign key is what? For this one, branch ID. This branch ID is referencing the table branch. Inside that, there is an attribute or a column name called as branch ID, which is nothing but this one. And on delete, set the value null. So whenever an employee is deleted, whenever primary key, whenever the branch is deleted, the foreign key branch ID will be set to null. Okay, makes sense, guys? This one, let's try to execute this. I can go ahead and execute. Yeah, command executed successfully. All right. So now what will happen if I go ahead and refresh it and go to the employee table and go to the columns. Inside these columns, if you can observe, branch is getting a key here. This is a foreign key, FK. FK stands for foreign key, PK stands for primary key. So even keys also have, the columns can have this. If you go to the keys, you will only be able to see the keys here. Okay, what keys they hold. All right, two keys, that is one primary key and one foreign key. All right, now that we have created two tables, and now what I want to do is, let's go ahead and insert some data into those tables. All right, let's go ahead and see what we can do and insert certain values into the table. So for that, what we need to do is we need to use a new command called, let's say I'll delete this. Let's say a new command called insert. Insert into, we need to give the table name. Table name is branch. So let's say we want to create the branches first. So insert into the table name, which is branch. Then we are going to give the values. So what values we need to insert? So I'm inserting the values into this table. So what table? This is my branch table. It contains what? First is branch ID, branch name, HOBID and head count. So currently HOBID and head count I don't have. Okay, so let's say we'll add this as a null values for these two. But for these, because we don't have any employees added to the employee table yet, right? So for that matter, the branch will now contains the head of the branch ID and head count ID as null. All right. And then we will go ahead and insert only the two values, which is the branch ID and the branch name. Let's go. Let's say we want to add values 101. This is a branch ID, comma. Then let's go ahead and create a branch name. Let's say head office. Let's say head office, because mind you guys, this is an integer. Whenever there is an integer value, you need not put the quotes like this. So because this is an integer value, you can just add the number. Because the branch name is a character, we need to put that into a single quote, and each value is separated by the commas, then separated by comma. And the next two values, this is HOBID and head count, I am going to add the null value. Just null, comma, null. That's it. So what I am going to do here, guys, just to recapitulate, insert into table name, which is branch. What you are inserting the values, and the values should be in the right order in the sense, like branch ID, branch name, followed by the HOBID and the head count. I can't go ahead and create a null here and then add a 101 and this way, because then it will throw an error if I go ahead and execute, right? Let me show that. So what it will say, column name or number of supplied values do not match the table definition. So the table definition is this one. Okay, this is your DDL, right? Data definition language, which uses the create command. What it is saying is column name or the number of columns supplied do not match the table definition. Hence, you need to always be cautious of the order as well as the number of elements or number of columns that you are trying to enter the values to. Now this looks good. Let's go ahead and execute this. So one row affected. So which means one row added. So let's go ahead and say, if I execute this branch, select branch, let's say, so what it contains, guys, now this contains a single row which we have inserted, which is branch ID 101, which is this value, branch name, head office, head of the branch ID, null, head count, null. Later, we can go ahead and update that. For time being, let's say only these three. Let's go ahead and add a couple of things again. Let's say there is a head 102 is the branch ID. Let's say this is a Pune, and then we are going to give 2. Let's say this is a Hyderabad. So our head office is Bangalore. This is a Pune, and then there is Hyderabad locations. All these three we can go ahead. I want to execute these two because this is already executed and inserted the command. Let's select both of them and then execute. So one row, each for each query, one row affected. Let's go ahead and select star from the branch. Let's see what it contains now. So now the branch table contains the three rows that have been inserted by these three commands: head office, Pune, Hyderabad. The branch IDs are 101, 2, and 3. All right. Now let's go ahead and say if I want to execute this. Now let's say instead of this, I'll say Mumbai. Now observe that I am keeping the branch ID as same. But In the definition, what is happening? I am saying branch id is a primary key. Whenever it is a primary key, it should always be unique. But I am making the contradiction here. I am putting a duplicate value. Let's try to execute this and see what it will happen. Yeah, now let's observe this error. Violation of primary key constraint. So by inserting this value, what you are trying to say, you are violating the primary key constraint. What it says, cannot insert duplicate key. Okay, that is the reason. Because where is that? The duplicate key value is 103. This is the 3. Okay, so understood guys how the queries will throw a message stating whenever we have a constraint added. So the primary key constraint is added to branch id, hence you cannot have a duplicate values entered. Understood this one? Now let's say we have added branches. Now let's go ahead and add certain values into the table of employee as well. Okay, now what employee, let's say, I'll copy this. Now we have added branches. Now what I'm going to do, add employees, add branches and add employees. Let's say, I'm going to add something in the table called employee. So now employee contains certain set of values, right? These are the values it contains. Now the very first value that we have in the table definition is defined by identity. So which means I need not enter. Whenever it is an identity, which means it will be auto generated, auto incremented. Whenever a new column, whenever a new row is added, it will increment by 1. If it is like 1000, 10,001 is the first row. Next row will be 10,002 whenever it is added. So I need, whenever there is an auto increment or a identity is provided, you need not enter that, insert that value here. So next what I'm going to do is insert into the employee. The first one is employee ID. I need not enter. Okay, straight away I'll go to the first name. Let's say first name I want to enter is Rohit. And then the next is last name. First name and then is a last name. Last name I want to enter is, let's say, Patil. And next what we have, next we have is a dog, which is a date of joining. Now date of joining is also a kind of a string we need to represent. What I need to do is put that into the quotes, but the format is always, guys, mmyy mm ed. So this is the format we need to provide the value. So let's say date of joining is 2000, and let's say the month will be 10 and the day will be 20. All right, so this is the date of joining. And after that, we have a designation. Let's say the very first employee to put, let's say we will going to add the designation as CEO. All right. This person will be a CEO. Then what? There is a gender. Gender, let's say it is a male. All right. And then what it is, salary. Let's say the salary is of integer type, right? So the integer value of the salary, let's say he's drawing, let's say, some value. All right. And then what is that? 11 lakh, let's say. Yeah, 1.1 crores. So now what is that I'm going to add? The next one is lead ID. Because he's a CEO, does not have any lead, so null value. And then there is a branch ID. So the branch he belongs to is the head office. Head office is what? Head office value is 101. I'm going to add that to 10101. So now if I go ahead and execute this, one row affected. So what I can go ahead and say, if I go ahead and run the employee table. So if you observe the employee table, there is an employee ID 10,000, which is, that is where it is going to start. This is the first value that it is going to take, automatically taken the first value 10,000. because we have not inserted that value. Understand that, guys, because that is auto incremented, auto generated because of this identity keyword. And the next row, if I add, it will be 10,001. Okay, because it is incrementing by 1. If it is 10, if I add, then it would be 10,010 next value. So now I'm just incrementing by 1, so this will be fine. And then it has added the first name, last name, date of joining, designation, gender, salary, lead ID is nothing. And the branch he belongs to is the head office, which is 101. All right. So now what I can go ahead and do, I can just copy that and add multiple employees. Let's say I want to add another employee. Let's say it is Fatima. Okay. Now Fatima is another employee that is being added. Let's say Abdul. And now what is the value that when is the person has joined? Let's say 2011 he or she is joined. 2011, let's say June 06, and 20 is fine. Okay, 20 or 12, whatever it is, 12. And this person is joined with a designation of VP, Vice President in IT, and this is female. Okay, and then you have a lesser salary, let's say 55. And then this person is also belonging to the head office, which is 101 branch. But who is this person reporting to? This person is reporting to Rohit. So Rohit has a ID of 10,000, because that is what the employee ID, right? If you observe, lead id is nothing but employee id. So that employee id belongs to Rohit. So Fatima is reporting to Rohit. Rohit is the lead or the manager of Fatima. This is what it means. All right, let's go ahead and execute this. Okay, one row affected, and I'm going to select this query and run the select query. So we have now, so observe this, guys, automatically this has taken 10,001 because of the identity. It has incremented by 1, so it is taking 10,001 as an employee ID. Then first name, last name, date of joining, and designation is vice president IT, female, and salary. Then this person is reporting to lead 10,000. 10,000 is this person, which is Rohit. So Fatima is reporting to Rohit. So basically, Rohit is a lead of Fatima. And then there is a branch ID. Both of them belongs to 101 branch ID, which is nothing but what? If I go ahead and select this and run. So if you observe this both, guys, so 101 belongs to head office. This is the branch. All right. So understood now what has happened so far?
Yes, sir.